Hello, everybody. Um, this is Eutimia Cruz Montoya here, offering a little lesson on yin and yang and how they show up in birth. Okay, so I have a little outline. I have a couple little drawings for you. But first, I'd like to start out with just an opening intention. Take a couple breaths. I invite you to join me. Ometeo, Great Spirit, all that is good, all that is here for our learning that we may serve the world. Thank you for this opportunity to be together in community. Thank you for this learning. Thank you for all of our teachers. Thank you for all of our students. Thank you for all of the people who trust us with our hands, with our voices, with our prayer, with our love, with our presence. Thank you for Panketsani for bringing us here together. And thank you for all of the ancestors, all of our ancestors who would seek to help this community grow in love and understanding, in liberation, for birthing, and for our well-being in all of its manifestations. Special asking of the energies of yin yang, of Ometecutli, Omeciwat, and Ometeo to be here. May I work with you through me so we can better understand all of your teachings. All right. Okay, yin yang. So everybody knows this pretty little symbol, and it's probably backwards because I have the phone on reverse. As you can see, there is the white is going to be yang, and the black is going to be yin, and there is a dot of the opposite in there. So this is interdependent. So these are the main qualities of yin and yang that are foundational principles that we always talk about when we're talking Chinese medical terms, illness, the way people show up personality-wise, the way the weather shifts, etc. Yin and yang is a world perception. By the Chinese, I consider Chinese medicine indigenous medicine based on the antiquity of it and the fact that the Chinese were not colonized in the same way the Americas were. So this medicine is very ancient as far as the understanding, and I'll explain a little more on how I see it as someone who grew up on the Red Road and in Danza Azteca sees the conflation of Mexica medicine and dualidad and Omeciwat, Ometecutli. But for now, I want to stick to my book smarts about Chinese medicine. So they're interdependent of one another. Without one, the other wouldn't exist. You see how they're swirling. It's not like a straight line. It's like if something is leaning on something, if you move that thing away, this falls, right? It's not just one way, it's both ways. So they need to be together, yin and yang, yin and yang. It's like yang, how they say it. I'm not an ancient Chinese speaker, so I always say yang or yang, but it's somewhere in between that I can't really pronounce, but I invite you all to research it. Yang is fourth tone and yin is second tone, I believe. It's like yin and yang. So they're interdependent. They are interconsumptive, so they consume one another. The example I like to give on this, there's I can give you body examples later, but for right now, there is a pond and there is the sunshine on the pond. Excuse me. If the sun is too bright and you don't get more yin that rains on it, the sun will consume the water in the pond. Okay, and then that will go further. So the yang will consume the yin. Now, they're also intertransformative, and that's related to interconsumptive. So let's say a human is a very sedentary human, but people's nature is to be moving and to rest, like day and night, right? So if you're resting, and like you're getting that ansiedad, that like ansiosa, like you're like, oh, I have to move. All of a sudden, somebody comes in and they get mud on your floor, and you go, and you like explode. That is an energetic human example of the inter transformation of yin and yang, or like going all day. All of a sudden you just pass out. Like it's not sustainable to be just yin or just yang. They will always transform into one another. I'll come back to interconsumptive with humanity, because that one sometimes is a little hard to get, and my example wasn't that awesome. But they're opposites, so they're always in opposition to each other, constantly mirroring one another. And then oh, I didn't write that one down. They're dynamic. So this one I like to spend a little time on, especially like in this day and age, and all the politics around gender, etc. In America. It's a very Americanized, very patriarchal view of gender in America, and that's mirrored in our language. But that it's so like binary, it's so static. Yin and yang are constantly moving into one another, and they're respective of one another. For example, I am for all like people seeing me. That's another thing about Western culture. It's all about looks. It's all about seeing. What do you appear to be? How people are going to name you or call you or think of you. So I appear to be a cisgender female, correct? I think, and that is so like for a cisgender female to stand next to a cisgender male, ostensibly, I would be yin and he would be yang. But if this male is like a super reticent, calladito, very like calm, quiet human, I would be yang and he would be yin in that respect. Yin tends to be smaller. I'll go over all of the identifiers of yin and yang, but also humans, like little tiny humans, when they're born, they say children are super young. So for a baby being young, the mama is going to be the yin to the yang, or the birthing person is going to be the yin to the yang. If that is a male child and I'm a female child, and yin is female and yang is male, then he's even more yang, right, as opposed to a yin child. Another example, as we age, we become more yin and more yang, depending on what aspect we're looking at. So my point is, yin and yang are constantly with respect to one another. If I had a twin sister, and my twin sister was just quieter than me, then she'd be the yin one. But if she were taller than me, then she'd be the yang one. Okay, so it's constantly moving and changing and morphing into something with respect to what there is, right? So weather-wise, say like summer is young, right? But some people's summer, like in the Bay Area, it rains a lot during the summer. So their summer is very yin, but it's still summer above the equator. So there's this constant question of your surroundings and the way you interplay with your surroundings, and how yin and yang are going to be completely transforming into one another constantly. So now it feels like a good time to drop the omesiwat, ometecutli in there, so, and ometeo. So in Mexica tradition, when we say like what one would perceive to be like an amen, like in church tradition, ometeo, it means ome is two, and teo means energy, or some people would translate as sacred. So amen, if you will, that's also a Western example, but I'm going for intelligibleness here. The word, the tlatoli, the is saying too sacred. The ometeo, too sacred. That is acknowledging duality, acknowledging the divinity of duality. Within that, the parts are Ometecutli, which, for lack of, again, better translation, English is really not the best language for when we're discussing indigenous understandings. Ometecutli is to Lord or to man or to Señor, they were saying in Spanish books. And then the Omeciwat is to woman or Doña. So it is also honoring the duality within the duality. So it's an even further breakdown, but to me, for my understanding of yin and yang, and also an understanding of the fluidity within the binary. The binary, in indigenous understanding has never been static and has never been specific, definitive in a box. It's a constant influx binary. So list-wise, according to the textbooks that have been westernized and dumbed down in Chinese medicine, yin is feminine, dark, wet, night, soft, cold, holding, solid, yielding. Yang is the opposite of those things. So yang is masculine and forceful and strong and airy and sunshine and daytime. And I said forceful already. Light, hollow. So when we're talking about organ anatomy, the yin organs are the ones that are wet and full and holding. I guess all the organs are wet on the inside. The yang ones are the hollow ones that peristalsis happens. So like, for instance, the large intestine is a yang organ because it moves things through. It's the in motion part of things. So these are yin and yang. Now, according to Chinese medicine, death is the separation of yin and yang. So we need both, all of us, regardless of where we're manifesting in that certain moment. So because they're always moving, like I'll just use myself, for instance, sometimes I'm more masculine and sometimes I'm more feminine, right? So like in my daily life, I've generally been a very type A. I was raised by a single mother. I love getting education, etc. But now that I'm in a partnership, one of the things I love, and this is kind of personal information, but I feel called to share it, I love taking the backseat in sexual time with my partner and I. But there's also times where we're flipping that, right? So there's this constant movement sometimes, and that's one of the, I think, the powerful parts of being in partnership is like who can take the dominant role at different times. So yang, again, would be that forceful, dominant. And in different environments, different parts of us might come out. So there's, again, that overarching Ometeo, and then you have Omeciwat and Ometecutli, and they're doing this dance amidst the Ometeo, right? Because it could be nighttime, which is one side of Ometeo, and then maybe she's being more dominant and he's not. Again, the English leaves very little to extrapolate in the fluidity of these binaries, or this duality rather. Okay, so I'm gonna just show you, I think this is helpful in the interconsumptive. So right here, these are yin and yang pairs. This is 3 pairs. So this is regular. This is like they're in the same. This is a healthy body system. Now there's less yin and more yang. Now in this, let's say that somebody hasn't been able to drink enough water, okay? And so their yin is down because their body has to use up the water it has in it because they don't have any more water. So there's not growing yang, but with respect, again, they're respective, with respect to the diminishing yin, the yang seems more. So a deficient yang excess, which is what this is, because it's not like there's extra yang, there's just less yin. The symptoms of that might be rosacea, or sweating palms and feet, or urinary dribbling. yin deficient symptoms, because it's this, there's less yin, but it shows up as heat in the body, like a flush, right? It looks hot, but it's hot because there's less water. Okay, and that goes for the same thing for this one, where we're using too much heat, like we're just burning through. I like to think of, not like to, but there's a movie, the one about Edith Piaf, the da 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 da, the life of that woman who sang that song, the French woman. At the end of her life, she was like shivering as she was dying. Her yin and yang were about to separate. And they kept putting more blankets on her. But what was happening is she had drank in so much alcohol and smoked so many cigarettes and like used up, as she was using her yang, she was using up her yang because she wasn't resting and she wasn't doing restorative processes. So at the end of her life, she was like full of the rest of her yin as the yang left her body. As the yin left her body. So that might not be the best example either, but the point is what was showing up were yin symptoms when her yang was like all burnt up and burnt out. So there's another example of the interconsumption. She used her yang, so she showed up with a shivering fever, which is a yin symptom if you're cold, too cold, right? So this is super duper what's the word I'm looking for? Canon, if you will, for Chinese medicine. We're constantly looking at yin and yang. Part of our diagnostic process is it yin or yang presenting? So a lot of the things I just mentioned, interior, exterior, hot or cold, excess deficient. So we're looking at these binaries, but the truth is they're always doing this, right? So let's take menopause, for example. A menopausal woman, when we are, people with female anatomy are constantly giving off their yin during menstruation and when we have babies. Babies are like take your jing, your life essence, that is theirs. So they're gonna constantly, you're gonna give, and then especially if you do things that are super yang, like smoking and a lot of smoking and drinking, you're gonna have a lot more heat symptoms. So in my clinical experience, the women who have histories with smoking and drinking, as well as a lot of sexual trauma and stuff in their past, their menopause symptoms hit them a lot harder, including the hot sweats, especially the night sweats. So the way to help that is to give more yin, which is like taking warm foot baths, which is different than putting your whole body in hot water that will make it sweat a lot. This is very different. I've seen with somebody who was raised more in the Lakota tradition of sweat lodge, where they make it really hot. They do really yang sweat lodges that make you sweat a lot, where it's actually depleting of the yin ultimately. So even though it makes you feel good in the moment with the warmth and the hotness, which is adding to your deficiency, when you sweat out a bunch and get out, it's gonna be pulling from you. As opposed to the southern style mexica temazcal, which will is less hot, but like warms you all around, okay? Gives you that really nice solid warmth, but doesn't make you sweat too much. It's more just like a movement. So I think that the temazcali is way more yin than like the inipi. I think that's the right word. And then the Lakota sweat that I grew up knowing. Okay, so what does yin and yang look like in birthing space? So I was in a birth, and it was a really cool, awesome experience. The woman was a 4th time birther, and she hit me up on the telephone and was pretty much like, I just left the hospital against their will. My water is broken. They wanted to induce me. I don't want to be induced. I don't have a doula. I don't have a midwife. Help. So I had met a woman in a temazcal, and I called out to her, and she's a birth worker, a midwife who's done births all over the world. And her lineage is she's a 3rd generation Romani midwife. And she's done birth on the border and in Mexico, Honduras, and Africa. So she's got birthing traditions from all sides of the world, which I thought was really awesome. Anyway, she came and we had a birthing circle of, I want to say like 7 different women and her husband, and the kids were with the grandma. It was her 4th. So all of the homegirls came because she was like, you guys are all doing me a favor. You can hit up whoever you want if they want to experience birth. So it was a really beautiful learning and teaching moment for all of us. And I was carrying my poposhkomik, my saumero at the time. And the first thing we did was call the ancestors, the abuelas, the people, the abuelos too, the yin and yang support system, spiritual support system to help us. That is very yin, to create a container. Yin holds. Yin is yielding. Yin is solid. It holds. The yang is what happens in the inside. So you have to have a solid container to hold the crazy moving yang energy in the inside. So we were in birthing process with her. We were in a circle around her. I've also found, for those of you birth workers, the most powerful way I've assisted a birth is when there are people who are willing to stand in a circle around the birthing mother, because it creates that safe container, that held container for her to do her work, because there's not energy leaks. The most powerful birthing spaces I've been in have been circles. So we created a circle around her, and we were drumming and we were singing, and in a heightened part of the song, the mother goes, she's coming, and she put her leg up. She was like this over the couch, and she put her leg up and she pushed and caught her baby in her hands and put like that, and then another woman like intuited it and just like ran behind her, and she went, oh. It was like the most primally beautiful thing I've ever seen. And we all were just like, ah, and it was just like, and then it got quiet, and I looked and I saw her husband in the back, like looking at us, but literally just like holding this very silent space. And I realized in that moment what was wrong with the world started with birth, because they took away our yin and our yang transformation. In that moment, the masculine energy in the room took the yin role, took the holding role, took the quiet role, took the yielding role, and his wife, the mother, who's yin, who had been holding for her whole 9 months, or 10 moons, for her whole 10 moons, warrior birthed and caught her own baby and went, oh, and we were all like, around her, being warrior, goddess, mother people too. And it was the most fascinating moment for me, that in that moment I knew the kind of power is being taken from birthing people, because and not just birthing people, birthing families, from village, from humanity, by not being able to practice Omesiwat and Ometecutli, to be able to practice the duality within the duality. Like now in this society, men are only allowed to be yang. If they cry, if they sob, if they're still, it's not acceptable. And same with women. You know, it's seen as a strong woman. A strong woman is seen as a blight, or a man doesn't want a strong woman. It's really divisive and really detrimental to our healing, to all of our healing. So when I saw in the birthing place, in that room that day, with that ceremony that we held, the way yin and yang naturally transform in a home birth without all of these hospital people coming in and out and disrupting the container, disrupting the like transformation of yin into yang through the birthing person. So there's another place to talk about it. When a human is a birthing person, we are gestating, that is a place of holding, that is a place of yielding. Your organs slowly move and yield to this growing yang inside of you. It's super powerful. When labor hits, yang, 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 yang. And when the moment comes where crowning happens and pushing happens, any of you who've ever been in a birth, which I think is all of us, right? Know how it could be hours, but it feels like seconds, right? It's like baby crowns and then 4 hours later there's a baby, but like you don't know where that 4 hours went because that's how full it is. The birthing of a mother, of a birthing person, is extremely young after this yin period. So much so that if a woman dies in childbirth, according to the Mexica, they are honored as warriors, and the warriors come back as butterflies. There's another example, yin and yang. The chrysalis is the yin phase to move into the yang phase. There needs to be this transformation. So that brings me to postpartum and postpartum interconsumption of yin and yang. So we've used all this yin, and eventually baby's not going to stay in forever, right? Eventually something's going to shift and labor's going to start and that yang's going to come. But then after that 6 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours, 37 hours of labor, you're going to be tired and spent. Your fluids are literally gone. Your yin has literally left your body, and you are now yin spent, yin deficient. So part of our postpartum period, which is why we're so important and why this work that you're doing and that Banca is teaching us is so important, is because we need to recharge our yin place. We need to restore our organs. Our blood is yin. Our blood is yin. We need to get it back so that we can do everyday yang things, like hold our, like peristalsis. So for instance, postpartum, if we don't get our things put back or we don't get our nourishment back and we just lost all these fluids, urinary dribbling, coughing when we pee, things like that, not to mention all of the organ stuff that Pankitsani knows how to do with sobadas, etc. I highly recommend everybody take those classes with indigenous human to learn these ancient ways of organ manipulation, because that's really important too. And we can do so much just from a nutritive standpoint. That's why this nutrition and this food is so very important to restore our yin after literally spending it. From a personal anecdotal point, I know we're all supposed to be soft. That's another thing. I'm so much softer now that I've had a baby. And when I got my cerrada from Panque, I like touched her. I'm like, ooh, she's like a pillow. I'm like, ooh. Anyways, I literally lost my muscle mass. Like after birth, I was like jiggly everywhere. And I know it's because I lost so much blood. The blood came out of my muscles. And so like I needed to eat that bone broth. I needed beets all the time. Like seaweed, I still munch that stuff like there's no tomorrow because of all of the B vitamins and stuff, minerals in it that tonify yin. Yeah, so interconsumption of yin and yang. Now, when we're talking about yin, we're also talking about support system, okay? So who's surrounding you? A new mama should not move, really. We should just be gaining our yin and not spending our yang, because the interconsumptiveness of yin and yang, if we're spending yang, when our yin went way, way down, our yang tried to catch up and then also is going down. So like, you literally like lose all your energy. It's really intense. Support system, yin and yang roles. So it's really important for us to have a strong community. And when our community is called upon, they're not there just to like be like, oh baby. They're there so that you can bond with your baby, who is the yang that just came out of you, and the yin and yang need each other. That baby is giving you your life back as you nourish its life from your milk. Yin. You're giving it your yin, and its spirit self is offering you their yang, which is like what you need to survive on a spiritual level, but also I want to say like on a chemical level, right? Because there's all this oxytocin going on, and whatever the baby offers in their breath, in their smell is, even just smell, it's so light, it's so airy. That's a very yang quality, that it's feeding you. So you need to be with your baby and you need to be well fed. So anybody who comes and visits you needs to be nourishing you, not wanting to take your yang counterpart that you just birthed and left all your yin from your body to, they're not supposed to come to take your baby. They're supposed to come and feed you and make sure you're okay, rub your feet. One of the things I really love postpartum, I had one postpartum woman come to do an Ayurvedic sesame oil massage on me. And sesame oil is very yin and very heavy and very rich and toasty, and it's also, there's some yang in there too, but super tonifying. And when I say tonifying, like a tonico, like it gives you energy. That was one of the most amazing feelings I had postpartum, is literally getting completely soaked from head to toe in warm sesame oil by this beautiful human. So I highly recommend that. So yeah, your baby is yang and your mother is yin. I think I covered everything so far. On a personal note, something that is, I can't stress more about birthing, the birthing process, and if you are a doula at a birth, or if you are just giving a human advice about their birth, is give someone palabra, or give someone the authority, like hand over the palabra, the manda, the like instruction to a particular person who will hold that space, who will be like the chief of the birth. I can't think of a better word in English, like palabra, give them the word, give them the manda, give them the I don't know if you guys think of a better word. Give somebody put someone in charge of your birthing space. Because it can't be you, and it can't be your birthing partner, because the two of you are concentrated on the actual action of birth itself, and your partner needs to be available for you. And don't make it the doula either, or I guess you could make it the doula, but there has to be somebody there who is in charge of holding the space to say, hey, no, not you here. Here's water, here's your circle, to keep the circle, keep the fire. Keep that fire lit. In my worldview, if you will, in my tradition, in my personal upbringing, that would be the person who has the poposhkomi, the person who stewards the ceremony, the person who has that smoke medicine. And they're the ones who are they're like the traffic controller person in the room, but also the spirit traffic controller in the room. When the spiritual energy needs to be contained, they hold the container of the birthing place. That yin place is really, really necessary, because the yin holds the yang. So I'll bring this all back around to organ theory, or blood and chi, or blood and energy. Chi is really just oxygen and the energy things have. There's yin and yang of chi as well, and that's like a different video. But we say in Chinese medicine that the blood is the mother of the chi, and the blood follows the chi. So the blood holds the chi, or the breath, or the oxygen. If we don't have enough blood, we can't get enough oxygen in our blood cells to help it move fluidly. We don't have enough blood, there's nothing to anchor, what we call anchor the chi. So an example of this is a human who's like really, really thin, kind of pale, or really pale, maybe dry, and constantly flighty, like they can't finish a sentence, and they're over here, and then they're over there, and they're over there, and they're over there. That is like not enough blood holding. And so they're just like they're really easily thrown off their kilter, really easily defeated by something like a wind that comes and blows them out of the way. So building our blood is really strong, or like a really, really powerful thing to anchor our spirit in the blood, because that yang, that chi, is also very spirit, right? When you have a spiritual awakening, sometimes you need to remind people they live in their bodies and be here. So if somebody's like having a crazy spiritual awakening, what do? First, feed them good root vegetables, feed them, put their feet in the earth, okay? Physical medicine and spiritual medicine are very closely linked. Like, that's why what we are doing is stewarding spirit in the material, which is why we need that. We need the container to hold the spirit. Okay, so that yin container, that setting up that person to hold, is so important. And that person to hold is going to be that yin role, while the birthing person and their support system is yanging, is bringing life from the spirit realm, earth side. Okay, I'm asking if there's anything else I should share. Thank you. Thank you all so much for listening to the call for this work. This work is literally saving humanity. Thank you. To all of our ancestors, thank you. May we have the fuerza to continue on this path together in our community with the people we love, the people we serve, the people who we will love, and all of the babies who will come through our loving, holding containers, through their powerful birthing parents. Thank you. And thank you to these unborn yet to come. May we continue to be humble learners and teachers of these ways, and of the intuitive medicine that comes through us, through our ancestry, through our DNA, through our connectedness to the great. Thanks, guys. Ciao.